The iPad Pro is great, and this latest 2020 version that Apple just announced seems to be as great and just a little bit better than the old 2018 model. But it's not that different. So I decided to just, not pick one up. I use my iPad Pro all the time. It's basically my main computer aside from making these videos. And even though it came out all the way back in 2018, it is still fast. It still works. I have not had any issues with it. So when Apple announced this newest iPad Pro, I was considering getting one. I wanted that updated processor. I, could see some use for that LiDAR and camera system. But the more I looked into it, it just didn't make too much sense. So instead of upgrading the hardware, I decided to rethink and upgrade almost everything else. Alongside this new iPad Pro hardware, Apple announced, I think, what's more interesting, trackpad and mouse support officially in iPadOS. Before, you could do it with an accessibility toggle, which, it worked, but it wasn't built into the OS like this is. So basically now, if you have a Magic Trackpad 2 or a Magic Mouse 2, you can connect it to your iPad, and there you go, you have a cursor built in, and it works differently than you're kind of used to on a desktop. But after using it for a few minutes, it kind of made this shift in my head. Apple has been claiming the iPad Pro is as good or better than a traditional computer, for a while now. And for me, for a lot of things, that has been the case. Writing notes, editing photos, internet browsing, all of that stuff I love doing on the iPad, and it works extremely well. So I decided to sit down and rethink how I actually use the iPad Pro. Since I use it as my main computer pretty much every day, I never actually gave any thought into how I'm using it. I just kind of used it as it was since the iPad came out. A kind of blown up version of the iPhone that has more utility, but I just never gave it any thought. The trackpad support, for whatever reason, clicked in my head and made me think of the iPad Pro as a Mac. So I went in on iPadOS and arranged everything as I would if it was my desktop computer, and it has made a huge difference. Before we continue, I want to thank this video sponsor, Skillshare. Now, right now, Skillshare is making a ton of sense. You're stuck at home, not much to do, why not learn something new? And Skillshare is the best tool to do that. So Skillshare is an online learning community that offers classes that lets you continue your learning career. And like I said, you don't even have to leave your house. Skillshare offers classes in design, photography, business, really anything you can think of in that creative field, Skillshare has a class for you. And Skillshare is also incredibly affordable. There are classes starting from just $10 a month. So if this is something you want to try, which you definitely should, especially right now, check out the link down in the description. The first 1,000 of you will get 2 months free of Skillshare Premium. So check it out and get learning. So the main thing I did, which I know will sound weird, is I took all the icons off of the home screen. If you think about it, on your Mac, how many times do you have your program files, the actual applications, on your desktop? For me, I don't have them there ever. Instead, I took all of those, arranged them into folders, and just kind of, made sense of everything I had, and I put them all into the dock. Like I said, I had just kind of gotten used to how I used the iPad. I never really gave it a second thought. So I would just keep 5 or 6 of my most commonly used apps in the dock, just like how I do on the iPhone. But you can put a ton of stuff down there. So I started off with files, just as if it was my Finder. I went to communications and Safari and Twitter and social and YouTube and everything else. And then I have folders for work and photography and my home apps. Putting everything here in the dock makes it easier to access. And I found, for me at least, I've actually been using more of the apps that I have installed. The main reason I think I enjoy this setup is because of multitasking. If I'm in an app and I want to bring something else up, you swipe up the dock and drag in an app, or you can search for one and drag it in. But in the past, there were a bunch of apps that I would want to use in multitasking, and I would have to go find it or search for it. It was just a multi-step process. And now that everything is in the dock, I just swipe up and drag it. I don't have to think about where anything is. And again, the more I thought about it, this is exactly how I use the dock on my Mac. And I think doing this, along with the trackpad support and the new Magic Keyboard case that's coming out, it makes using the iPad Pro as a computer just more intuitive. You're kind of used to using a computer that way, and with the trackpad supports and having everything in the dock, It just makes more sense to me, at least. I think the trackpad support is actually really well done. You just connect it to your iPad and it just works. You don't have to turn anything on or adjust any settings, although you can if you want, but you don't have to get working. And I think using a little nub instead of a mouse cursor makes a lot of sense. It's dynamic, it snaps around. I know some people don't like this. I absolutely love it. It makes sense with the iPad Pro. If they brought this over to the Mac, I probably wouldn't like it. But since it's a touch-first operating system, I think it works. And all the gestures that you can use to swipe between apps and get to multitasking or bring down the control center or bring up the dock, it all works. And I think it actually mirrors what you do on the Mac pretty well. Really, the only issue I have with it right now is that I have to use the separate Magic Trackpad right now because that's the only accessory that works. But once that Magic Keyboard is released, I think this is gonna be game-changing. If you want the latest 2020 iPad Pro, I think go get it. It seems to be a great piece of hardware that takes the older 2018 model just to that next little step. But I think what Apple is doing with the iPad Pro is what we have wanted them to do for a long time. Now, it's not perfect. I think iPadOS is a great first step and they need to take it even farther. For instance, make the Files app even more robust and let me do more with it. And I could see a refresh of multitasking be something that Apple could implement, and definitely kind of let you do more with the home screen. I've kind of had to force my way into putting everything in the dock, but if I could, move things wherever I wanted on the home screen, that would be a different story. But overall, the iPad Pro is one of the Apple products that I'm actually excited about in 2020. And I didn't even upgrade to the latest one. The hardware is that good that everything Apple is doing on the software side and me kind of rethinking how I use the product, I'm loving it. I'm getting excited for the future of the iPad Pro.